So, hi everyone. Today we're going to speak about griefing opportunities in Kleros. So we will start with a general description of griefing opportunities, and then we'll see example in the Kleros dispute resolution system. So what is griefing? The word comes from online gaming, when you have players which are making some action which is not beneficial to themselves, but which are harming others. So for example, in Minecraft, people putting dynamite to explode the construction of others. They won't win anything due to that, but they can harm others, be happy about them, trolling. So even if something is not beneficial to you, that does not mean that you will never do it. We'll have some fun game. So I put some smart contract which basically say if you send 0.01 ETH to it, you will destroy the content of the contract. And in this contract, I have 0.8 ETH in it. If no one destroys it, I will be able to get them back. So if you want, you can make me lose money by losing a bit of money. The other contract asks you to send 0.1 ETH, and the other contract asks you to send 1 whole ETH to make me lose money. So how can you analyze that? If we analyze that with a normal form matrix, we can see that I don't have any choice to play. I'm in the presentation, I can't defend myself. But you can either send some transaction to the contract or not send anything. If you send a transaction, you will lose 1. In this case, it's 1 cent of ETH. And if you don't send anything, you don't lose anything. So for you, your optimum is clearly not to do anything. But perhaps someone wants to do it. It can be more or less problematic with griefing opportunities, depending to how much people has to pay to grief and how much harm is done. So we can analyze them with griefing factor, which is the ratio of the harm done to the cost of griefing. So why do people grieve? One explanation is bounded rationality. Basically, just people not knowing what their action will lead to. So we had this example with the Parity multisig wallet, where the library contract was destroyed by someone. So this someone destroyed the contract. He had to make 2 transactions to do it, which made him paid around $1 worth of fee. And he destroyed $300 million worth of Ether in the contract which were linked to this library. So in this case, that's a 300 million griefing factor, which is really, really, really bad, even if we are just analyzing this possibility from a game theoretical point of view. No one has incentive to do it. You just pay transaction fee to gain nothing and destroy things for others. Why would you do that? One possible answer is because you just don't know the consequences of your action. Another possible explanation is the trembling hand, where basically you want to do something, but you do something else. So that's not completely crazy. That happened. That actually happened to me once by just having 1 extra digit in a transaction I was making. So luckily it was not Ether, it was mostly some test stuff, so that was fine. But sometimes people just miss what they want to do. One other example in the out-of-chain world is the Hawaii missile, where someone say, well, warn everyone that there is a missile. So of course he did not want it to do that, but he just clicked on the wrong button. Or just for fun, people sometimes just want to harm others because they like it. People have utility function which may seem strange or hard to analyze, but utility function of some people include the loss of utility in some other persons. Sometimes griefing cannot really be griefing because you may win a reward by doing it. It's just that it's an external reward. It's not a reward in the system we can analyze. So for example, the Shanghai attack, where people were making tons of transactions to slow down all the computers which were running Ethereum, you don't have any intra-system, you don't have any incentive in the Ethereum system to do that. You're just paying transaction fees to do nothing for you. But now, if you look out of the system, you can want to do that because you just short the Ether. So basically, you bet on the fact that the Ether is gonna lower, and you make an action in the system to reduce the value of the system. You can have a competing system, and in this case, you get some competitive advantage, or you can be some government, and for some kind of reason, you don't want the centralized system to take over a huge part of the economy, and so you want to destroy them. So we still have no idea about why people made the Shanghai attack, and it could be multiple possibility I explained, but not by mistake, because it was something done for a long time, repeated. So in this case, it's clearly not a trembling hand or a bad Boolean rationality. So let's look at some example of griefing in blockchain protocols. So you have one honest party which want to pass a transaction in green, you put some gas price, and some dishonest party just want to prevent this party from having his transaction accepted in a block. What can he do? He can add tons of transactions which are doing nothing interesting except taking all the size of the block, and they have to put a higher gas price to make sure that these transactions are included by the miner, because the miner want to optimize their reward. What can the victim do about that? This victim can increase the transaction fees, the gas price is ready to pay, in order to go first in the order of the miner, inclusion in the block, and still be included in the block. But by doing that, you forced some other party to pay extra transaction fees. Sometimes just looking at griefing factor may not be possible to analyze this, and we want to use O notation in order to not have to deal with the whole small detail, but just deal with it at a constant and lower than a particular bounded value. In this case, what is the cost? You have to pay for the block size multiplied by the gas price that you put, and for the grief is in O of the attacker gas price. So O notation, it's not exact notation. That means that it's not exactly attacker gas price, because you also had the price that the sender of the transaction was ready to pay. In this case, the griefing factor is not that bad. It's 1 divided by the block size. So if you have really large block size, that's going to be super expensive to prevent someone from making a transaction or force him to increase the fees. But we could ask, well, can we just wait for the attack to pass? In this case, the victim can wait, and at some point the attacker will have to stop the attack, and the transaction is included. In this case, is there some grief? Yeah, there is still some grief, because time is money, and time money is also money. So what does it mean? It's like if you're receiving the transaction, your Ether are going to be delayed. And during the delay, you can't use your Ether, so you can't use them for staking, you can't use them to invest in some other productive activity. And for the sender of the transaction, is probably buying something. So for example, is buying a computer. And if when you buy a computer, your computer arrival is delayed by 10 years, that's really bad, because 10 years after, the spec will not be relevant, you may have been dead in between. So people, their utility function, they prefer utility now than utility in the future. So in general, there is some special case where you make insurance and retirement, but in general, people will prefer to have something now than something in the future. So time grief is grief. In this case, it's still not a really problematic attack because the griefing factor is in O of the block size multiplied by the attacker gas price. So that's still really expensive to delay some transaction. So now let's look at a few examples in the Kleros dispute resolution system we are building. So this is not a talk to explain Kleros. You will have one the last day of the conference. But basically, we are building a dispute resolution system with crowdsourced juror and smart contract enforcement. Let's look at the fee structure. So let's take a simple case. You have Alice and Bob. Alice is contracting Bob to make a website, and she does not trust Bob, so she put money in a smart contract, and if Bob does the website, she can sign, and Bob can get the money. But in case something would go wrong, she can go to dispute resolution. First case, let's assume that the plaintiff has to pay the fee. So Alice has to pay the fee, it goes to dispute resolution, the arbitrator, the juror, they agree with Alice, so they rule in favor of Alice, Alice gets her money back, but Alice has paid 2 ETH of dispute resolution fees, so in this case, Bob has griefed Alice for free, which is very problematic because you can have bots or even a low-paid worker to destroy a marketplace by just going to all the people which require work and saying, yeah, okay, I will do it, make a smart contract to me and I will do it, and then never do it and make the employers lose money in dispute resolution. So now we can look at another fee structure when you ask both parties to pay half of the dispute resolution fee. In this case, if Bob refuses to pay the fee, is automatically losing the dispute, and Alice gets her money back, and no money is used for dispute resolution. In this case, it's a little better, because Alice, in this case, will lose 1 ETH, and Bob will also lose 1 ETH, so you have a griefing factor of 1, so it's not perfect, but that's a way better solution than what we had before. Can we do even better? Yeah, we can ask both parties to deposit the arbitration fees and reimburse the deposit of the winning one. So in this case, if you're honest, you don't lose anything. Is there still a grief? Yes, there is still some small grief because you lose time. In this case, Alice, if she's contracting Bob for a website, she's not contracting someone else for the website, so the website is delayed, and so that's still little grief, but not as problematic as we had before. Now let's look at what happened with an appeal system. In the case of Kleros, when you appeal, you can get more and more jurors. So now let's assume that the appeal price is going to be always the same. We ask both of them to deposit some appeal fee. And in addition, we ask Alice, in this case because Alice is the appellant, to also put an extra stake which will be used to compensate Bob for the time loss in the appeal would Alice lose. So we get more juror, but Alice can still do that again and again, and each time she's delaying the result of the dispute, which is gonna grief Bob in terms of time. In this case, we have O of 1 time griefing factor, which is okay-ish, but could be better. So now, to get a better griefing factor, so a lower one, let's look at what happens if we ask to double the dispute resolution fee every time we have an appeal, and then we put twice plus 1 the number of jurors on every appeal. So we increase more, way faster the amount of jurors and the amount of fees. Increase, and Alice ends up to pay way more on each new round. So in this case, we have a logarithmic amount of time which is lost compared to the amount spent in dispute resolution fees by Alice. Of course, assuming that Alice is going to lose a dispute. So this seems quite good because at the beginning you can bother, but at the end it starts to become so expensive to delay the result of the ruling that parties won't be able to grieve even if they want to. What's something interesting we can see is that sometimes griefing and attacking can be really close. Because now what if Alice keep appealing and then Bob does not have enough money to put the appeal deposit? Bob will be considered as a loser, Alice will get back the amount of money in the dispute, plus her stake, plus the deposit. So Alice will not have lost anything except perhaps a bit of time for herself. So to prevent this griefing attack to be turned into a real attack where the attacker gets some benefit of it, we need a post-dispute insurer. So in this case, if Bob is not able to pay to deposit this appeal fee, he can ask some post-dispute insurer to deposit the appeal fee instead of him, and the post-dispute insurer will get the extra stake which were normally used to compensate Bob's loss of time. So what do we need to remember on this small example? It's mostly about system design, mechanism design. Because when you are building a blockchain system, will it be for blockchain, will it be for a decentralized application, you are making the rules. That's quite exciting compared to the outside world where you are bound by the rule of physics, the rule of government, the rule of previous organization. In this case, you can really decide almost everything as long as it's computationally feasible to apply those rules. If we look at those two design possibilities, on the left one, where you have a really high griefing factor, but when there is no grief, the victim will not lose anything, compared to the right one, with a small griefing factor. So in this case, the victim will lose 1 if the griefer pays 1, but the victim loses 1 every time. So just analyzing it from a rational game theory point of view won't be enough, because if you assume every party to be rational, no one will ever grieve, so you will always be in the bottom, and in this case, it's way better to always be at 0, 0 than to always be at 0, -1. But we've seen that people may not be always rational. We've seen that you can't analyze everything in your system because people have out-of-system incentives. And so in this case, you really want to lower the amount of harm that someone can do compared to what it costs to them. So let's finish this presentation with this little game. And I don't know if someone griefed me. Did someone grief me? If someone griefed me, you can like raise the hand, unless you want to stay anonymous. Well, I don't have any griefer. Well, sometimes people are nice, but you may not also be enough to have some really bad people among you. Or perhaps the stake is not high enough. Or perhaps you just analyze my utility function by thinking, well, if I grief him, he will be able to speak about it. So it will increase his utility. And so in fact, I will not grief him. So I don't know why you did not grief me. But people have some reason, people are not rational, and we want to prevent them from doing harm when they can do it. Thank you.